It's Gail with Everything Nash here with Stephen Curtis Chapman. This is our first time doing it on video, so I'm super excited about that.
I know. The world has changed forever, has it not? I miss face-to-face, real in-person things a lot, but I also am very thankful for technology and the advancement of these last 2 or 3 years. I think if there's a silver lining, one in all of this darkness that has been, is that we, have learned some new ways technologically, to still get to interact and talk and communicate. So that's good. It's a good thing.
It is good. It is good, but I'm anxious to see you in person when that works out too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, me too.
Okay. BMI Icon. I want to talk about that honor, and also you are legit the first Christian artist to ever receive that award.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing. I'm still sort of trying to process it. So my wife knew ahead of me several months because they wanted to surprise me, but then they realized, well, we're going to announce it ahead of time, so he will know. But we want to put my wife being the consummate surpriser. In fact, my 30th birthday, which was almost 30 years ago. So if you do the math, you can figure out this is a big year for me. But she surprised me terribly and wonderfully, but terribly, because she told me that we were going to a pajama party, and we walked into a huge room full of business people, my parents, my best friend from high school. 250 people I hadn't seen for years. And everyone was dressed very nicely, except for me and her in our pajamas. She went and promptly changed into a very nice outfit and left me alone for the night in my pajamas. So that gives you a little insight into the devious ways of my wife. So she loves a surprise, but she has a little bit of an evil streak where she loves when it, surprises you to the extent that you're then sort of left, hanging. So I was very nervous when she said, I have a surprise, but this one you're really going to like. So anyway, she knew and kept saying, now this is a really, you're going to go get a new suit. You're going to have to really, this is a big, big thing, and she kept saying that. I was like, okay, I'll be there and I'll be ready for whatever this is. But I did then find out about 2 weeks before, Leslie from BMI came to a listening party for my new music, because I've got some new music that I'm releasing this year. 35 years after the release of my first record, I thought, hey, what would be the coolest way to celebrate 35 years? It would be for me to give, my friends and fans new music from the perspective of where I am now. So I'm sharing that music with the label, with Provident, Sony music label group, and the folks there who hadn't heard this music. And at the end of our little listening session playback, they said, hey, we have a surprise for you. You got new music for us. We have something for you. And Leslie came up and announced that in June, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be presenting Stephen Curtis with the first ever in the Christian music genre, the BMI Icon Award. And it was my wife who then came afterwards, because I'd heard and I knew, but that I'd somewhere heard of the BMI Icon Award, but it wasn't on the front of my brain of what that really is, or who's the list of those, who's in that list of people. So my wife came up immediately after, gave me a big hug, and she said, do you know who the list of people, you realize what that is? And I said, I know it's a really awesome, amazing, incredible thing, but not really. And she said, we're talking, Sting, and and she starts going down the list of the people, that are on this list. And she said, this is really, really something special. So anyway, I'm blown away. It's amazing. BMI has been a huge part of my journey, of my story. Mary Beth and I first got married, moved to town. We're having our first baby. My career was just getting started as a songwriter primarily. I hadn't even released any records yet. And we were trying to get a down payment for our first house. $48,000 we were going to try to scrape up. Well, that was the full amount of the house. So we just needed a down payment of whatever it was, and we didn't have it. And we went to BMI because we were trying to get the bank to approve us for a loan, but we didn't have any credit. We were two young kids, just getting started in life with a baby. And it was BMI, Joe Mascao, who's a dear friend who's gone on, passed away a few years ago, but he went to BMI, to the powers that be. He was at BMI at the time, and he said, let's vouch for this guy. I think this guy good things. I really believe in him. We really believe as a company. So we're going to put our, stamp of approval on this guy. Went to the bank on our behalf, wrote a letter, and that's how we got a loan for our first house. So I've always had a very special place in my heart for BMI all these years. And so it was awesome. Such a special night.
Do you feel like an icon?
No, I still feel like a kid from Paducah, Kentucky, who's just, I'm like the nerd at the prom. I'm just happy to be here. I can't believe I got asked, to even be here. I don't feel like, the cool kid who's, and honestly, I wrote a song, and me sing this song. I didn't know how to acknowledge this incredible honor and all the people that were going to be in the room who represent 35 years of my journey to this place that I never imagined when I started out as a Paducah boy on my great adventure, as you might call it. And so I thought, how do I, and they said, you got 3 to 5 minutes, to say whatever you want to say. And they said, please try to keep it to that, because they know me, number one, and I have a hard time doing anything in 3 to 5 minutes, and keeping it concise and succinct. And so I thought, well, if I have 3 to 5 minutes, that's the length of a song. Probably the best way for me to do this is going to be to write a song. So I actually wrote a song called A Turtle on a Fence Post. And if you know that saying, I've heard this said, that if you ever see a turtle on a fence post, he didn't get there by himself. And I thought, this is what I want to say about being an icon of any sort, is I'm only on this icon fence post, because a lot of people put me here. A lot of people were a part of me getting to this spot that I'm at. So I wrote this kind of tongue-in-cheek, fun, but also heartfelt song about I'm just a turtle on a fence post, grateful and thankful to so many people who basically helped put me here. And I got a chance in this song to thank a lot of those people by name or by category, and just kind of say thank you. I just feel very blessed and grateful.
Speaking of songs, give me the story behind your song, Still. I love that song. Such a good song. Story behind it.
Thank you. I am so excited to have new music to share with people. I really am just, I've been so, I've released a few songs here and there over the last few years, like one song, to now this streaming world and the new world order of how music gets consumed. The good news is I can go record a song and share it with people the same day if I want to, put it up on, Facebook or Instagram or whatever. But the downside of that is I'm from a world of wanting to make, a statement that isn't just one song. Think of it in terms of a book. I love reading the whole book. I can't just take chapter 14 and go, that's a great chapter, but that doesn't tell the whole story. And 35 years now, I've made records, albums, and some people are scratching their head going, what is that? I don't know what that is. Well, that was, a vinyl disc. When you put it on and you listen to the whole side A, and then you flipped it over, listen to side B. I went and saw the Eagles play the other night, and they played Hotel California, and they literally had someone come out on the stage and put a vinyl disc on a record player, drop the needle, and that's when the band started playing. They played the whole first half of the record. Someone came out, walked out on stage, flipped the record over, very dramatic, flipped it over, put the needle down, and they played side B. And I thought, that's how music, it should be made and listened to and consumed, as far as I'm concerned, because that's, you take a journey. So anyway, I had this desire to do that. even after 35 years. And yet I had to wrestle with a lot of doubts and a lot of insecurities about, do people really care or really want to hear, new music from Stephen Curtis Chapman? There are amazing new artists that have come along in the last 35 years, not to mention the last 5 years, that people are very excited about and have things to say. And if they want to hear Stephen Curtis Chapman, I hear a lot of people say, man, I just want to hear A Great Adventure. I want to hear I Will Be Here. I want to hear Cinderella. I want to hear, And so I had to wrestle and push back a lot of those voices, because under all of that, I kept saying, to myself, and I kept feeling very compelled that, I have a perspective now of life, having walked through devastating, tragic loss of our youngest daughter, having celebrated so much, with so many families like yourself, through the miracle of adoption and the stories, the beautiful stories, the hard stories, all of that. As I say in the song, still, I have wrestled and I have rested and I have trusted and I have tested God's patience. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. The world has changed. So much has changed in these last 35 years that I've been doing this. And I have perspective of things right now that I still feel very strong about sharing with people, just like I did day one, record one, when I just sat down as a kid from Paducah saying, I just want to encourage people and tell my stories, through songs, and have these conversations with whoever will listen, because I think there's something here that is important for us to talk about, and I want to write a song about it. I still feel that compelling. I still feel very passionate about that. And under all of it, I have found through all of the mountains and the valleys that God is still faithful, and I still believe, and in a time when many people struggling with their faith in a way to say, I'm going to kind of tear it apart or deconstruct it or look at it this way or that way, I am more confident than ever, even having walked through such loss and questions and confusion, that God is good and God is faithful. All the things I've been singing all these years in my music, I still believe that. And I believe it even more than ever. And so that felt like an important song to write and sing. And so I wrote a song called Still.
It's a beautiful song. I want to ask you, I've spoken to Walker Hayes a lot. And as you know, he lost a baby in childbirth shortly after she was born. One of the things he says is it's really hard, especially as a Christian, to not be like, well, my tragedy is worse than yours.
Mm.
What's your message to people who just deal with overwhelming loss, as so many people have, even in the last 2 years? What's your message?
That is a very real challenge. To grief and loss can be terribly isolating, because you can begin to feel like no one else has ever felt this pain and this grief. And even though intellectually you can argue that back and go, no, look at the stories of, people have suffered terrible, horrific loss. And so how dare I think that, mine is somehow unique? But that's the human experience, that when we're in that place of grief, I think the reason why, my wife and I heard this early on when we lost our daughter, is that something like 90% of marriages don't survive the loss of a child. And I remember immediately thinking, how is that possible? Because if anything, in this moment, we're going to need each other. We got to hold on to each other. But as we even walk that journey of the last 14 years since we lost our daughter, we can understand it's only by God's grace that we're still married, we're still together, because grief does this very, it does this work of isolating you into your own place of darkness, to think nobody understands this, nobody feels as sad or as hopeless as I feel right now. And I think that's part of just the darkness of that we walk through. And I feel like that's part of the reason why I've written songs through our own journey of grief. In fact, there's a song on the record, on my new record called Don't Lose Heart, that's going to be coming out in just a couple of weeks and will be the first radio single, actually. And that song was written specifically from hearing a story from a lady at one of my concerts who came in. Music, I love it. I listen to it all the time until I lost a child. And that grief and loss sent me to a place that was so dark and felt so isolating that I couldn't even listen to Christian music because I didn't believe that the people singing to me understood what I felt. Their songs that I loved suddenly felt like they were kind of, they just didn't go to the depth of my pain, because I thought, yeah, but that may be true, but you haven't felt what I've felt. You haven't lost a child. And she would share with me how hearing our story and hearing me sing songs out of that place of loss, she was able to trust that. She was able to connect with, well, here's somebody who does know. And so she said that began to give me sort of the ability to begin to believe that I wasn't completely alone. So I wrote this song, Don't Lose Heart, that says, I know it's hard, I know it gets dark, but we're gonna make it home. You're not alone. I'm with you in this, and ultimately God is with us in this. And I am living proof of it, because if he wasn't, I wouldn't be here having this conversation right now. Certainly wouldn't be writing songs about it. So I feel like that would be the message, to just say, you are not alone. Not only are there people who know not your specific pain, but know pain and loss and ache and longing at a deep, deep level. And most importantly, which is the message of the gospel that is the thread through all of my songs, is that God has experienced the loss of his own son, that God has experienced, he made himself, the word became flesh, as scripture says. God came to make himself fragile enough to feel pain, to feel betrayal, to feel grief, to feel and doubt. If you look at the Garden of Gethsemane, and even Jesus saying, God, let this cup pass from me. I mean, God allowed himself to enter into that, all of that pain, so that we wouldn't be alone. So I want to keep sharing that and singing about that, and hopefully encouraging people.
Awesome. Last question. I'm going to let you go. I want to talk quickly about, you're going to play throughout the summer and fall, and you're also playing at Life Fest, which is in Bon Aqua. Can you just speak really quick about all your touring and playing for this? I was there last year. I won't be there this year because I'll be out of town, but the grounds there are so cool. It's just an amazing event. So can you talk about it real quick?
Well, I am super excited that Nashville has a Christian music festival, long overdue, some would say. And I know we've had different things over the years. I've been around long enough to remember we used to do a thing at Christ Presbyterian Academy, where my kids went to school, called the Festival of the Arts, and I did that a few times outside on a flatbed of a truck, and people gathered out and with their lawn chairs. But for a long time, I felt like, man, if any place ought to have a great music outdoor Christian music festival. We've got Pilgrimage Festival now. We've got some festivals, Bonnaroo down the road and all that. But gosh, we need a great Christian music festival. So I'm really excited that my friends with Life Fest, who have been doing that for many years, not here in Nashville, decided to bring it here. Super excited. It will be the one festival I'll do this summer. I'm doing some events throughout the summer, but that's the one sort of outdoor music festival that I'll do. So I'm excited about that. I love, playing outside and getting the audience out and dancing and celebrating and camping out and having a great night. So yeah, I'm very thrilled. I've not been to this specific venue, so I'm excited. It's good to hear you say it's a very cool spot and a cool place. So yeah, and I'll get a chance to sort of, share some new music too, which is going to be fun. People will not have heard any of this music live. It'll be the first time. So I'll share a couple of new songs, as well as, we'll saddle up our horses and dive in and live out loud and, dance with Cinderella and do all those things that I love to do.
Awesome. I wish I could go. It is so good to see you, my friend.
Great to see you too, and thanks for sharing your beautiful faces of your youngins and your story with your sweet girl, and for letting us be a part of that with Show Hope. We are deeply grateful and thankful.